The last time we looked at the first 5 days of creation in Genesis 1 and asked the question, what do those first 5 days teach us about God? We saw in the first 3 days that God is taking something that is formless and void and making it inhabitable. Then in days 4, 5, and 6, God was making the land and the sky and the sea inhabited. He's putting animals and birds and fish into his creation. What we learned there too were two basic things, and they are related. One is the doctrine of monotheism. Genesis 1 is all about one God, and that God creates without help, and therefore he will not share his glory with anything else in creation. We also learned that this one God is huge, and the word for the morning was the immensity of God. This God who creates nebulae, who creates galaxies, so numerous that we can't name them, is the same God who comes to us, who loves us and meets us in our trials and afflictions, who encourages us when life gets difficult. Today I want to look at days 6 and 7 and ask a slightly different question. What does creation teach us about ourselves, not the Creator, but ourselves as part of creation? In day 6 of creation, we have two major creative acts corresponding to day 3. The first of those is in Genesis 1, starting at verse 24. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creepy things and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. In day 6, God begins by creating animals that will inhabit the now dry land. Then he continues with the second great creative act of day 6, which is the creation of human beings. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." That's the summary of the creation of mankind. Genesis 2 is going to retell the story of the creation of Adam and Eve in a little more detail, but that's it for Genesis 1. What is the writer trying to teach us about ourselves? What is God trying to teach us? There are a lot of things, but there is the one thing that is going on in Genesis 1 as it relates to you and to me. People are the apex of creation. People, Adam and Eve, you and me, are the climax of God's creative efforts. If you read through Genesis 1, even from a literary standpoint, you can see a crescendo building, and it continues as you go through all of Genesis 1. The length of the description of every day is getting a little longer with each day, and the Genesis writer is establishing a literary pattern, a rhythm, to the creation story. And so he says, "Let there be," and it was so. God tells them to reproduce according to their kinds. There's the repeated statement, "and it was good." There's this rhythm, and there's this pattern being built all the way through the first part of 6 days. But now we are at the climax of creation, and the patterns have changed. The familiar, "let there be," becomes "let us make." And instead of creation reproducing according to its kind, people are created in our image, in the image of God, specifically male and female. And instead of just filling the earth and inhabiting it, we are told to rule the earth, to have dominion over all the inhabitants of the earth, to rule over the inhabitants of the land and the sea and the sky, and in fact to have dominion over the earth itself. And then this crescendo comes to its fulfillment in the statement that God looks at everything he has made, and it is not just good, it's very good. What does creation teach us about ourselves? It teaches us that we are not some mistake. We are the crowning point of God's creation. You are the crowning point of God's deliberate, ordered act of creation. And all of this was created so that he could create something that resembled himself and would have a place to put us. The omnipresent, all-powerful God, having brought forth from formlessness, having inhabited all the spheres, said, "Let us make man in our image." God wanted something that resembled himself more than the birds, more than the fish, more than the animals, more than the trees. He wanted something that resembled himself, and so he made Adam and Eve. And he made you and me. I exist because God made me. And if that wasn't enough, he made me as his imager. And if that weren't enough, he made us to accomplish his purposes while we are here. The challenge of reading a passage like Genesis 1, that is so well known, is that we say, yeah, God created me in his image. And it's so easy just to let that be water off a duck's back. But God wanted something that resembled himself, and he made you. That is who you are. That's the message of Genesis 1 as it relates to us. So what does it mean to be created in the image of God? What does it mean to be created after his likeness? What does it mean to be created in the image of God? Again, if you read the commentaries or theologies, there are lots of opinions. The history of the church has shown people trying to find just one part of what it is to be a person, and that one part is that a person is made in the image of God. But there are several things that we can know for sure about what it means when it says that you and I were created in the image of God. It first of all means that you and I were created in his likeness, which means that we are like him, but we are not him. That's a critical point we talked about last week, that I was created in the image of God, that I resemble God, but I am not God. I am distinct from God. All creation is distinct from God. All forms of animism and pantheism, whether it is New Age or whatever, it's Mormonism, if it asserts that we have a spark of the divine, then it is wrong. We are only in the likeness of God. We are not God. But on the other side of the coin, if you step back and look at the context and the flow, it's pretty clear what it means to be in the image of God. It means that you and I resemble God more than any other part of creation. God wanted, for whatever reason, part of creation to resemble him, more than the birds, more than the fish, more than the animals, more than Yosemite in all of its beauty, more than the redwood trees in all of their beauty. He wanted something in creation to resemble him, and so he made you. He made me. He made Adam and Eve. The heavens have a marvelous function, don't they? The heavens get to declare the glory of God. But you and I are his imagers, and that is something that no mountain, no sunset, no starry sky can ever do. They can't look like God. They can't resemble him. They can proclaim his glory, but they can't look like him. You and I were created for that purpose, to resemble him and to do his bidding. What does that mean? I think there are two sides of that coin. You and I were created in the image of God, and on one hand, that means that we reflect him, that in our face and in our eyes we reflect, we look like, we resemble the God of the universe. And as I said, there's a lot in what it takes to do that. There are spiritual components, for example, in being created in the image of God. You and I are more than flesh and bones. You and I have a spirit, like God is spirit, and we have an awareness of the spiritual. We have an awareness of God. That is part of what it means to be born, to be created in the image of God. We have mental abilities, the ability to think accurately. We have rational abilities. We have the ability to relate to God, to have a need of fellowship, to share with him. That's what Genesis 2 is all about. But being created in the image of God has to do with our moral makeup as well. We have a conscience. We understand that there is a right and a wrong. We have choices, and we will be held accountable for those choices we make. That's what Genesis 3 is all about. So all of these things together, and probably many more, are what God put into me and into you so that we stand as God's vice-regents on this earth to do his bidding, that we resemble him more than anything else in all of creation. There are many, many different directions I could go with this, and one of the challenges in this lecture was to narrow it down to one application. So here it is. What is to me the primary significance of the fact that I am created in the image of God is simply this. It is the image of God that is the source of all human dignity. That's a mouthful, but please think about it. It is the fact that you and I were created in the image of God that creates human dignity. Dignity is a great word. It's that sense of worth that we crave, the sense of meaning, of knowing that I'm somebody, that I'm here for a reason, that I'm here for a purpose, that I'm not just some mistake, but there is dignity in who I am. There is importance. There is significance. All of these qualities are things that the world is frantically searching for. It's frantically looking for meaning and worth, looking for dignity. Genesis 1 is here to tell us that the sole source of dignity is the fact that you and I were created in the image of God. As I thought about this, I've come to understand just how messed up the world is on this issue. The latest word for it is self-esteem. You can see the word frantically doing anything. You can see the world frantically doing anything it can to seek for dignity and meaning, for self-esteem. And as you look at all the crazy things it does to find meaning, it contradicts itself. It goes in opposite directions. It's just frantic because it's looking everywhere except to the source, which is God's creative act, creating us in his image. I want to explore this for a while because I want you to really understand it, because it's one of those things that we hear every day. Every time you turn on the television, you are going to hear this being preached, the world's definition of dignity. And I want to give the Holy Spirit time for this stuff to sink in, and maybe in your life realize, you know what? I have fallen prey to the world's thinking on dignity in this area. So let me just handle several different things. The world claims dignity, but it claims it apart from God. That's the central problem. The world claims dignity, is looking for it, is claiming that it has found it, but it is looking in all the wrong places. What was the message of the Tower of Babel in Genesis? God says, be fruitful and fill the earth. Sinful creation says, no way, I don't want to spread. I want to stay in one place. I want to build a tower because we can reach the heavens. And the Tower of Babel was in defiance of the command of God. What creation is doing is that it is asserting for itself all honor and glory that only belong to God and his creative acts. How does the world assert dignity? One of the ways that it asserts its own dignity is that it measures performance. The world puts us on a performance track, doesn't it? It says, you are worth something if you perform. And it's not just any kind of performance. You have to perform our way. You have to accept our goals, our values, and then if you go that direction, then you will be one of the beautiful people, and we will let you put award shows on television to give the rest of us another opportunity to pat you on the back and tell you how great, how wonderful we are. Yes, you have meaning. But it's just the world saying, these are the beautiful people. They have striven after the things that we see as important. And because they have succeeded, because they can run faster than you, can jump higher than you, tackle harder than you, make more money than you, sing better than you, then that is the dignity, that is the honor, that is the glory, that is the meaning in life. Those are the people that are important. We even have a television show lifestyles of the rich and famous. Would any of you watch lifestyles of the meek and humble? And yet, those are the real important lifestyles, aren't they? This world wants to give dignity to people based on performance, and it starts really young. Were you ever the last kid chosen for dodgeball? Were you not the starter on your high school basketball team? Girls and boys, do you check out everyone, or do you just check out the beautiful people? This is insidious, and it starts at the very, very beginning of our lives, where we are told that our worth, our value, our dignity is based on what we can do. The world measures dignity based on performance, but just to show you how messed up the world is, it does just the exact opposite as well. There is a movement today to see self-esteem as something totally separate from performance, too. We just want kids to feel good about themselves. But what if they are not good? It doesn't matter. I just want them to feel good about themselves. But what if they're not good? Can't we deal with reality? As an example, there was a professor teaching a history class once that had a student flunk the midterm. Now, the student didn't just flunk. It was 41% or something really poor. And it was no surprise to the instructor because this student spent most of her time pulling her sweater over her nose and looking around at the ceiling of the classroom for the first 5 weeks of class. She came to the professor and asked, "Is there any way I can pass?" He said, "I don't think so." Then she said the most amazing thing. "I feel pretty good about myself. I think I'm a good student." And he thought to himself, "What? You're a terrible student. You're a terrible student in this class? Maybe in your other classes you're doing a good job. But you're not even trying in this class. You're sitting back there thinking that I'll pass you because you sat in that chair for 20 hours. I'm not going to do that to you." It was amazing that in her search for dignity, her search for meaning and significance, she was oblivious to what she really was. What she needed was a healthy dose of reality and to learn to take a few notes. Understand, kids need to feel good about themselves, but I want them to feel good about themselves because they are good kids. I want them to understand that they are good kids because God made them good. I want them to understand that they are good kids because they were created in the image of God. And in that fact lies their dignity. Yes, I want them to feel good about themselves. I want them to achieve their potential. That's important. But that's not who they are. That's not who I am. That's not who you are. Even if you're the last person chosen for dodgeball, that's not who you are. You are the apex of creation. God made this world for you, and he wanted something that looked like himself, that resembled himself, that could love like he loves, that could think like he thinks, that could dream like he dreams, that could want fellowship like he wants fellowship. So he created you, and he created me. That is dignity, and that is the sole source of human dignity, being created in the image of God and being created good. Yes, the image was damaged. It was damaged in Genesis 3. Sin came into a good creation, but the image of God is still there, and God loved his creation so much. The image of God meant so much to him that he willingly sent his Son to die for his creation. He died so that he could redeem us and draw us to himself. And do you know the end of the process? In 1 John 3, at the end of the day, when we stand before him and see him face to face, John tells us that we will be like him. You and I were created in the likeness of God, and we have been redeemed from our sin, and what lies ahead is the pure vision of God someday in heaven, where we will see him face to face. Someday, because of the image of God that was put into us at creation, we will look like our Savior. I've been saying all along that people are the apex of creation, but that's not completely accurate. Of all that was created, we are truly the apex. We are the climax. But Genesis 1 does not leave us with that emphasis, because Genesis 1 gives us a radically God-centered view of reality. You and I are all of equal dignity. Every one of us is of equal worth because every one of us was created in the image of God, young and old, male and female. We all share equally in the image of God. This is why the world is so wrong. Dignity and meaning does not come from what we are able to do. Dignity and meaning comes from the fact that we are created as a purposeful act of creation. We were given heaven and earth to subdue, to have dominion over, to take care of. But ultimately, all of us are given the wonderful task of being obedient to God, and through that, bringing glory to Him, the ultimate object of dignity and worth in this universe. May we never derive our sense of significance from what we do. May we always derive it from who we are, created good in the image of God and redeemed, and someday we will be like Him. Our sins are going to be gone, and we will be like Him.
God be with you till we meet again. By His counsel's guide uphold you. With His sheep securely fold you. God be with you till we meet again. Till we meet, till we meet at Jesus' feet. Till we meet, till we meet. God be with you till we meet again. God be with you till we meet again. Neath His wings protecting hide you. Daily manna still provide you. God be with you till we meet again. God be with you till we meet again. When life's perils they confound you, put His arms unfailing round you. God be with you till we meet again. God be with you till we meet again. Keep love's banner floating o'er you. Smite death's threatening way before you. God be with you till we